Who's the man behind the headlines? This evening, my guest is Reneto Adams.
Real Batman police. What? Mr. Adams. Wait.
A controversial, no-nonsense cop. 14 years after he left the force, some people remember him with fondness and call for his return. Others say retirement is exactly where he should stay. Who's the man behind the headlines? This evening, my guest is Reneto Adams. Reneto Adams, welcome to Profile.
Thank you, and Happy New Year to you, Jamaica, your listeners and your viewers, and a very good evening.
Thank you so much. So 14 years now into retirement, and yet wherever you go, you still make headlines. What do you think accounts for that?
My historical contribution to this country, of course, in all areas, crime fighting, protecting the Jamaican people, seeing to it that the people go about their lawful business in peace, to the exclusion of any criminal interference. And to that extent, I think I excel, and Jamaican people continue to remember those days.
And a big defiant personality at the same time, which did not start just now and recently at all.
Very defiant as it relates to having my own way, doing the right things that I think are the right things.
Let's talk about the roots of that. Growing up, Beecher Plains, Treasure Beach, St. Elizabeth. What was early family life like?
Okay, historically, I was born in 1948 to Merton and Mabel Adams. And at that time, I went to school, the primary school in Beecher Plains. But before having reached there, my father at a particular time, when he was in America, came home and said to Mummy that observing this boy, I wanted him to become a policeman.
And you would later on go on to become a policeman?
And I did that. Born in a very simple, humble village in those
people, welcome to the show. To all my Jamaican people and Caribbean people, big up on yourself. So, Reneto Adams come from St. Elizabeth, Treasure Beach, Beecher Plains area. We got Beecher Plains Primary School. That extraordinary cause, to be honest, me never know. Me always hear about Adams and his crime fighting and how good he was and how good he still is. And everybody wanted to become commissioner, but I never know that him actually come from St. Elizabeth. Let's listen.
Those days, went to school barefooted. In some instances, you wore the same shirt and pants for 1 week. Only that mommy would have washed it overnight and had it ironed in the morning. So when we returned from school also for lunch, it wasn't anything exorbitant. She would have mixed flour, probably as it were at that time, with only water. And then you would have had 3 stones in the kitchen, upon which they put a round piece of iron, and the flour was thrown on that, and it became baked. And that was sliced and given to me along with what in those days we call sugar and water. Lemonade, pretty name nowadays.
Yes.
And we were satisfied with that and went back to school. So when we came in the evening, it was almost the same thing. We had a particular observation to make. When you're near the house, you saw two smokes. One, if it were very dark, dinner wasn't ready, or maybe just put on. One, if it was very white, dinner was ready. And we were then happy and elated.
Now, what were you like when you were going to primary school? Because you've told me that even then you were very defiant.
Yes, I remember having done, in those days we call it scripture. Listen. Conducted by the principal at that time, H.B. Crawford, Hensor Barrington Crawford. And the whole ramification of his disciples and Jesus Christ and so on, and he was crucified on the cross and all that stuff. However, he asked if any of us had any observation. I don't think he used the word observation at that time, but anything to ask about the scripture. And I paused, waited until a few guys asked their questions, which were probably answered to my, indignation, because I didn't believe some of the answers. And I asked, when my time came, what color Jesus Christ was.
You as a child were asking what
As a
color
child, and
Jesus.
that is 60 odd years ago I'm talking. In those days, well, let me further on the answer. He rhetorically put the answer to me. The questions to me. And I said, I know he was a black man. And probably for about 3 minutes, everybody became dumb.
This was unheard of.
Including the teacher.
You had silence in the classroom.
Silence, total silence.
Because every picture of Jesus Christ that most people have
was
ever
white.
seen.
Everything was white. The angels were white. The church, all the angels and all this thing inside the church depicted those people as being white. So Crawford's pronouncement on me was that I had blasphemed.
You are a troublemaker.
Yes, and I'm a troublemaker, and But before that, I also came out of the Black Power, or it was a Black Power movement then that was going on in America and other places over the world, and especially so in Africa. And he pronounced upon me 2 weeks suspension from school.
He suspended you from school?
For 2 weeks. Then the irony which followed that, I could not have gone home and said to Mommy that I was suspended for 2 weeks. So, as explicit as I would want to be, I stayed away from school.
I wonder if I hear what going. Just because he questioned the color of Jesus Christ, everything just where I sit in general when it comes on Christ, and it's just white. And him saying no that he was black. And they said he was gonna be blaspheming. Can you believe that? Blaspheming for that? And he was suspended for 2 weeks. People, may I tell you. Listen.
Will hide in the bushes. And when my classmates and so on, in the evening I would have asked them for the notes and so on.
You hid for 2 weeks?
Yes. And sometime after Mommy found out. And he also pronounced on me the name Fidel Castro. At that time, Fidel Castro had just taken over, I think,
This is former Cuban president.
Former president of Cuba. He had just kicked out
Batista.
Mm-hmm. And I followed at that young stage, even then. I may have been, 11, 12.
Because even then, people were seeing you as a bit of a rebel. And ironically, later on, rather than being a rebel in a sense, the expectation from your father was that you would become a policeman. And that is where we're going to be headed when Profile returns right after these messages. Stick around. We are talking to Reneto Adams, and we're back with you right after the break. Part 2 of my very intriguing interview with Reneto Adams. Reneto Adams is back with us on Profile. When we ended the last program with a controversial no-nonsense cop, we were talking about the early days of policing in St. Catherine, and then you would move on to St. Anne, and later on to some of those more controversial postings which we'll talk about. But a lot of people might not know that for a while you were a traffic cop?
Yes, I was a traffic cop. In those days, they call you the courtesy cop. You can imagine Reneto Adams being before a courtesy cop, having turned into a revolutionary as it relates to my action upon criminal elements. So yes, but before I went to St. Anne, I went to traffic, where I was trained in traffic engineering and to do traffic duties, for which I did for 18 years. And I remember when a particular election came up. In those days, we had the Joyous and so on, and you had the robots.
That's
I was one of
Jamaica Omnibus Service.
Jamaica
That's
Omnibus.
the precursor of the JUTC.
Yes, that's right. And we had to seize the robots, and I was put in charge. And let me tell you, ever since I became a cop, I have been put in charge from my constable. I remember where I was stationed in Bagwalk, and the sub-officer went on leave, and I was placed in charge. But the story that led me to St. Anne was a particular government came in, and at that time they thought that I was, harassing the robot people and so on. And I remember having prosecuted people from both sides, but a particular side took it to another level, that they thought they should have victimized me. And I was called one day and taken off the traffic management team because I was asked for some chances for certain particular people. And I told them that I didn't know how to give a chance. People were already arrested or charged or prosecuted or given summons. The only person or the only authority that can give you a chance is if you go to court and you ask the judge or so on for leniency. Then that's their prerogative. And because of that, I remember being spoken to that way on the Wednesday, and I refused. And the force order, which is a circulation of orders that comes out, every Friday. And I saw where I was reverted off traffic and transferred to St. Anne. No, the type of person I was, I contemplated my actions and my options. And the option that was forceful in my mind was to just take it up. I didn't ask them why, I didn't protest, no protestation from me. Went on and took up my duty. Mm-hmm. And when I went to St. Anne and reported to the superintendent, and Mr. Brown, he has long gone, soul rest in peace, told me that he saw a document where I was sent there and I must be on probation for 6 months, and watch and reports must be written on me. And I asked him for what? I refuse instructions. Only that, refuse instructions, connoting as if the instructions were proper instructions coming from the force and its authority.
If you were this defiant person then, how did you end up with assignments which would end up being much bigger, such as a special anti-crime task force and the crime management unit?
Yes, because they all knew, and I think they still know, that I was one of these persons in the Jamaica Constabulary Force that was never afraid of, from the Prime Minister down to the criminals on the street. I wasn't afraid.
You'd have been encountering a lot of criminals when you talk about the Special Anti-Crime Task Force.
That's it. And therefore, every instruction that they gave me, I had results. Whether I pursue the activity the way they directed me or in my way, most time I did the activities applying my own plan and my own philosophy on it, my own psychology on it, and I was always successful.
Would, however, at the same time have brought you into a lot of challenging circumstances. So let's talk a little bit about some of them. First of all, about the Brayton 7.
Yes.
Because that was one of the big challenges that you faced as a police officer. This is the killing of 7 young men at a house in Brayton in St. Catherine.
Yes.
And you encountered a lot of criticism over that, including from the police commissioner at the time.
Yes, and the government too.
Yes.
I remember, I was called to the commissioner's office at 3 p.m. a particular day in question. Because it never only started in Brayton. As a matter of fact, it didn't start in Brayton. It started at the Above Rocks police station, where criminal elements went there, shot and killed the policeman after they went and asked him for water. And a lady was also shot across the road. And the commissioner gave me certain instructions and certain intelligence, which I followed. The same day, well, it happened, I think it was, I don't remember if it was the night or, but however, my men and I started working on the intelligence the very moment we got it, which led us to Cassava Peace. And when we went to Cassava Peace, we found one of the suspects. Further investigation brought us to Cumberland. We picked up another suspect.
That's Cumberland in Portmore, St. Catherine.
Yes. And when we went to Cumberland, we saw an uncle of one of the suspects who gave me certain intelligence upon which we worked on, and that brought us to Sealway in Brayton. And the rest is history. We went there, pronounced my presence, identified ourselves, and asked the people to come out. I told them we had a warrant to be executed on them and so on. We heard a lull for about 5 minutes. Nobody answered. But we knew they were there because the intelligence and other persons who led us there, we were sure.
This would end in a sort of massive shootout.
Yes.
That would make headlines across the country and also
the
international
world.
in a sense. And I want to talk to you a little bit as we go to the break, when we come back from the break, about how you dealt with that kind of criticism and also some of the more controversial and other controversial issues